The great alien empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their fleets stretched across galaxies, their armies were feared everywhere, and their rulers thought themselves untouchable. To them, humans were nothing, just a young race living on a single blue planet with no real power. The empire laughed at Earth, calling its people weak, fragile, and unworthy of respect. One day, during a grand meeting of worlds, the alien nobles decided to play a cruel joke. Among them was a princess, young and graceful, but cursed in their eyes. She had been born unable to carry life. For her people, this was worse than death. No suitor wanted her, no noble claimed her, and she lived under the shadow of shame. She was called useless, the infertile princess. The nobles whispered to each other and then spoke aloud. "Why not give her to the humans?" The court roared with laughter. To them, it was the perfect insult. The humans had no place in galactic politics. Giving the princess to one of them would be like throwing her away. She would never give birth, never bring honor, and never matter. It was a punishment to her and a humiliation to Earth. The princess stood silent as they mocked her. She was handed over like an object, like a broken gift. The aliens did not care what happened next. They only expected more laughter when the humans realized what they had been given. And so, on a quiet corner of Earth, she was brought to a simple man. Not a soldier, not a king, but a farmer. He lived among fields of green, under a wide sky filled with stars she had once traveled past. The empire thought it fitting. Give her to a man of dirt and soil, let her rot in obscurity. The man, whose name was Daniel, did not laugh. He did not mock her. He looked at the princess, tall, silver-skinned, with sad eyes that had seen too much, and he only bowed his head. He welcomed her into his home with his quiet respect. Where the empire had seen a joke, Daniel saw a person. The princess did not know how to feel. She had expected hatred or ridicule. Instead, Daniel gave her kindness. He offered her food, showed her where she could rest, and spoke gently, even though she hardly understood his simple human language. In the nights that followed, he did not treat her as a trophy or a burden. He treated her as an equal. But deep inside, she felt hollow. The voices of her people echoed in her mind. Useless, infertile, broken. She was afraid this man would one day believe the same. Still, the days passed quietly. Daniel took her to the fields, where he grew wheat and corn. He showed her how to plant seeds, how to water them, how to wait patiently for growth. The princess did not understand at first. Why spend time in dirt, waiting for something so small? But Daniel only smiled. "Everything begins with a seed," he said. "With care, even the smallest thing can grow." His words stayed in her mind. She could not stop thinking about them. A seed and growth. Could it mean more than farming? Could it mean hope? Unseen to them, alien eyes were watching. The Empire's spies kept track of the princess, waiting for the moment she faded into nothing. They wanted to report her misery back to the court, to spread more laughter. But something began to trouble them. The princess did not look broken anymore. In the fields, she smiled faintly. In the small house, she laughed once or twice. She seemed alive. Then, late one night, the princess woke with her hand pressed to her stomach. She felt something strange, something she had never felt before. Warmth, a spark of life. Her heart raced. It was impossible. It could not be. Yet the feeling grew stronger each day. The Empire had declared her infertile. The doctors had sworn she would never carry life. But now, in a quiet human home, far from the cruel courts of her people, she felt the impossible stirring inside her. Was it hope? Was it life? Or was it just her imagination? Daniel noticed her strange silence, the way she often touched her belly. He asked if she was ill, his voice full of concern. She could not answer. She was too afraid, too uncertain. But deep in her heart, she knew something had changed. The infertile princess, the gift nobody wanted, might not be infertile anymore, and if it was true, the galaxy itself would never be the same. The days on Earth passed slowly, but something inside the alien princess was no longer the same. At first, she thought it was only her imagination. A strange warmth filled her body, a soft rhythm in her belly that she could not explain. She tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it was nothing, but deep inside, she knew. Something impossible was happening. Daniel noticed the change before she said a word. He saw the way her hands often rested on her stomach, the way her eyes looked distant, as if listening to something no one else could hear. He asked her gently, "Are you sick? Do you need help?" The princess shook her head, unable to answer. She did not have the words. Her people had sworn she could never carry life. If she told him what she suspected, would he laugh? Would he call her broken, as her people had? She stayed silent. Still, Daniel's kindness never changed. He cooked for her, worked the fields, and at night sat with her under the stars. He told her human stories, of old heroes, of small villages that stood against great armies, of simple men who became legends by protecting what they loved. She listened in silence, her heart aching with a new, unfamiliar feeling. Hope. Far away, the alien empire still watched. Their spies reported back to the nobles, who demanded news of the joke they had played. "Is she miserable?" they asked. "Is the human ashamed of her?" The spies gave false smiles, hiding their uncertainty. The truth was stranger than they could admit. The princess did not look broken anymore. She walked with quiet strength. Her eyes held light again. Whispers began to spread. Servants in the alien court spoke in secret. "The infertile princess. She seems different. Some say she carries something." At first, no one believed it. It was impossible. But the whispers would not die. Rumor turned into fear. One night, as the winds howled across the fields, the princess finally spoke. Her voice trembled as she told Daniel the truth. "I was never meant to have a child," she whispered. "But something is inside me. I feel it growing. I feel it moving." Daniel froze. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. "If it is true," he said, his voice steady, "then it is not a curse. It is a miracle." Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever called her life a miracle. No one had ever looked at her with such belief. For the first time in her existence, she felt more than shame. She felt proud. But miracles come with danger. The Empire soon sent envoys, demanding to see the princess. They came dressed in armor, their faces cold and sharp. Daniel refused to let them inside his home. The envoys sneered at him, calling him a fool. "She belongs to the Empire," they said. "She is not yours to keep." Daniel stood firm. "She is not a thing to own," he replied. "She is my wife." The envoys laughed, but when they looked into the princess's eyes, they saw something that silenced them. A spark, a glow, a quiet defiance that had never been there before. They left in anger, but also in fear. Back in the Empire's capital, the whispers grew louder. If the princess truly carried a child, it would change everything. For centuries, her people had believed she was cursed, useless. If she gave birth, then the shame would fall not on her, but on those who had mocked her. The nobles argued in secret chambers. Some wanted her killed before the truth spread. Others wanted the child taken, raised as a weapon for the Empire. None of them wanted to admit the obvious. A human man had succeeded where their kind had failed. Meanwhile, the princess felt the heartbeat inside her grow stronger each day. She placed Daniel's hand on her belly, and he felt it too. His eyes widened in awe. "Life," he whispered. "Our life." But peace could not last. Shadows moved at the edges of their small farm. Strange lights flickered in the night sky. Daniel knew the Empire would not leave them alone. The princess knew it too. The gift nobody wanted had now become the secret everybody feared. As the stars shone above them, she whispered to herself, "This child will not be taken. This child will not be a weapon. This child will be free." And in the darkness, the unseen watchers listened. Their reports would soon reach the Empire. The joke they had played was no longer funny. It was becoming dangerous. The infertile princess was no longer broken. She was becoming something greater, and the galaxy, though it did not know it yet, was about to tremble. The rumors had spread across the Empire like fire in dry grass. The infertile princess, the one given away as a joke, might be carrying life. The nobles laughed in public, pretending the story was foolish, but in their private halls they whispered in fear. If it was true, their mockery would turn into shame. If it was true, the child could change everything. The princess, living quietly on Earth, felt the life inside her grow stronger each day. At night she would place Daniel's hand on her belly, and he would feel the faint rhythm of a heartbeat. His eyes would fill with wonder every time. "A miracle," he whispered again and again. To him, it was not only a child, it was hope, proof that love and kindness could do what power and cruelty never could. But the Empire did not see hope. They saw a threat. Their scientists declared it impossible. They sent messages filled with fury, demanding that the princess return to her people at once. "We must examine her," they wrote. "We must test her." Daniel refused. "She stays here. She stays with me." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of steel. He was only a farmer, a man of the soil, but in that moment he stood stronger than any empire. The envoys returned, this time with weapons hidden under their robes. They demanded entry, but Daniel barred the door. "Leave," he said, "or I will make you leave." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. The princess stood behind him, her hand on her belly, her heart trembling with fear and pride. The envoys left, but not in silence. "The Empire will not forget this insult," they hissed. Their ships rose into the sky like dark birds, carrying the message back to the court. The human farmer was defiant, and the princess was indeed carrying life. When the news reached the capital, the nobles erupted in rage. Some shouted for war against Earth. Others demanded the child be taken as soon as it was born. A few whispered of killing the princess before the truth could spread. But no one laughed anymore. The joke was gone. Meanwhile, the princess felt both joy and fear. Joy, because every day the life inside her grew stronger. Fear, because she knew her people would never allow it. They would come for her child, and for Daniel. She dreamed of shadows at the window, of blades in the dark, of her baby taken away before it could even breathe. Daniel saw the fear in her eyes. One evening, as the sun set over golden fields, he said to her, "They may come, they may send armies, but I will stand with you. I will not let them take what is ours." Tears filled her eyes. She had been called useless her whole life. She had been given away like trash, yet this human, this simple man, stood taller than all the nobles of her empire. For the first time, she believed she could fight too. Then came the night of the first miracle. The sky above the farm lit up with strange lights, scouts from the empire, circling, watching. The princess clutched her stomach as pain rippled through her. Daniel rushed to her side, his face pale with fear. "It's too soon," he whispered. "But hold on. Please hold on." Hours passed. The winds howled. The stars themselves seemed to watch. And then, with a cry that shook the night, the child was born. A small child, with skin glowing faintly in the dark, eyes brighter than the stars, and a heartbeat strong enough to echo through the room. Half human, half alien. Something new. Something never seen before in the galaxy. The princess wept as she held her child. Daniel knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he touched the baby's tiny fingers. "Our miracle," he whispered. "Our child." But outside, hidden in the shadows, The Empire's spies watched. Their eyes widened in horror and awe. They sent their message at once. It is true. The princess has given birth. The impossible has happened. By dawn, the news had reached the Empire. The infertile princess had become a mother, and her child, born of two worlds, was living proof that humans were not weak, not worthless. They were something greater. The nobles raged, the generals plotted, the priests declared it heresy, but none of it mattered. The first miracle had already happened, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The child grew quickly, and from the very first day it was clear that this was no ordinary baby. His skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, like silver dust resting on human flesh. His eyes, bright and sharp, seemed to study the world with unusual focus even before he could speak. He laughed at sounds no one else could hear and reached for things far beyond his cradle, as if the universe itself whispered to him. For Daniel and the princess, he was simply their son. They named him Aaron. To them, he was not a weapon, not a miracle for the galaxy. He was only their child. Daniel sang to him in the evenings simple human lullabies while the princess held him close and told him stories of the stars. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. She was not infertile, not broken. She was a mother. But outside their small home, the galaxy trembled. The Empire tried to hide the news, but secrets this great do not stay buried. Servants whispered in halls, soldiers murmured in camps, and merchants carried tales across the stars. The infertile princess has a child. The child is not fully alien. The father is human. At first, many laughed, calling it another rumor. But then came reports from spies, describing the child's strange glow, his strength, his rapid growth. Doubt turned to fear. In the high court, the nobles screamed at one another. Some demanded the boy be seized and raised under Empire control. Others feared him and called for his death. "This half-blood will destroy us," they cried. "If he lives, our people will lose all pride." One old noble spoke words that chilled the chamber. "If humans can give life to what we thought dead, then perhaps humans are not weak. Perhaps they are stronger than us." Silence followed, heavier than stone. Meanwhile on Earth, Daniel and the princess lived each day in quiet defiance. They knew the Empire was watching. Strange ships sometimes appeared at the edge of the sky. Lights flickered in the forests at night. Daniel built defenses around the farm, simple traps and hidden weapons, though he knew they would not stop an army. Still, he refused to run. "This is our home," he said firmly. "This is where our child will grow." Aaron grew faster than any human child. By the time he was 2, he could speak in 2 tongues, human words and the language of his mother's people. By the time he was 3, he could lift stones heavier than his own body, and his eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, saw things no one else could see. The princess watched him with awe and fear. "He carries both of us," she whispered to Daniel. "He is of 2 worlds." One evening, when the sun sank behind the fields, the family stood outside together. Aaron pointed up at the stars. "They are coming," he said in a small, calm voice. Daniel and the princess froze. "Who is coming?" she asked. Aaron's glowing eyes looked at them without fear. "The ones who laugh at us, the ones who want to take me away." That same night, alien warships entered Earth's orbit. Their shadows stretched across the sky, blocking the moon. The Empire had finally made its move. Panic spread across human cities. Governments demanded answers, militaries prepared their weapons, but no one truly understood why the Empire had come. They did not know of Aaron. Only Daniel, the princess, and a handful of spies knew the truth. The child of 2 worlds was the reason the stars now burned with war. Inside their small home, the princess held Aaron close. "They will not take you," she swore. Her voice shook, but her heart was steel. Daniel placed his hands on both of them. "Then we fight," he said. But how could a farmer, a fallen princess, and a small child stand against the greatest empire in the galaxy? The answer lay not in their strength, but in what they represented. For across the stars, in colonies crushed by the Empire's rule, whispers spread like fire. The infertile princess has returned as a mother. The Empire's curse has been broken, and it was a human who gave her life again. To the oppressed, it was more than a rumor. It was a symbol. Hope had been born. As warships darkened the skies of Earth, as alien generals prepared their armies, and as the Empire demanded the surrender of the child, one truth became clear. The joke had ended. The shame had ended. The princess and her son were no longer forgotten. The child of two worlds had arrived. And the galaxy would never laugh again. The Empire had thought it was only a cruel joke. Giving their infertile princess to a human was supposed to be humiliation, nothing more. But now, that joke had grown into something dangerous. The child of two worlds was alive, strong, and filled with potential. Fear spread through the Empire like poison. The nobles no longer laughed. They whispered in secret rooms, their voices sharp with worry. What if the boy grows stronger? What if humans can do what we cannot? What if others see this child and believe in them? For centuries, the Empire had ruled with pride. They told themselves they were superior, chosen, untouchable. But the princess's child broke their lies. If one human could give life to their useless princess, then perhaps humans were not weak at all. Perhaps humans were something more. The Empire could not allow such a thought to spread. But it was already too late. Across distant colonies and hidden planets, oppressed peoples whispered the story. They spoke it in dark taverns, in mining tunnels, in rebel camps. The infertile princess is a mother now. The human gave her life. Their child carries both bloodlines. If they can defy the Empire, maybe we can too. Hope, once silent, had begun to roar. On Earth, Daniel and the princess felt the weight of that hope pressing against their small home. Ships appeared in the sky more often. Strange figures lingered at the edges of their land. And at night, the princess dreamed of shadows reaching for her child. Aaron, though still young, sensed it too. His glowing eyes would fix on the horizon, and he would whisper, "They are watching." Daniel held him close and answered, "Then let them watch. They will see we are not afraid." But inside, Daniel's heart was heavy. He was only one man, only a farmer. How long could he protect his family against an empire? The answer came sooner than he expected. One night, as the wind howled through the trees, figures cloaked in black moved silently across the fields. Assassins, sent by the Empire to end the problem before it grew. Their orders were simple: kill the child, and if possible, kill them, human too. Bring the princess back in chains. The assassins crept closer, their blades glinting faintly under the moonlight. But Aaron, though still small, woke suddenly. His glowing eyes opened wide and he whispered, "Father, they are here." Daniel grabbed his old hunting rifle, his hands steady even though his heart pounded. The princess clutched Aaron to her chest, her eyes burning with fury. She had lived in shame all her life, but not anymore. She would not lose her child to the same empire that had thrown her away. The door burst open. Shadows flooded inside. Daniel fired, the sound echoing through the night. The first assassin fell, but more came. They fought like ghosts, swift and silent. Daniel stood firm, his body shielding his family. The princess, with a strength she never knew she had, struck back too. Her alien blood gave her speed, her mother's love gave her courage. Together, they fought not as victims, but as protectors. And then, something impossible happened. As one assassin raised his blade to strike Daniel, Aaron cried out. A wave of light exploded from his small body, throwing the assassin across the room. The walls shook, the floor cracked, and silence filled the air. The assassins froze, their eyes wide with fear. This was no ordinary child. This was power unlike anything they had seen. Panicked, they fled into the night, leaving their dead behind. Daniel dropped his rifle, his chest heaving. The princess held Aaron tightly, trembling with both fear and awe. The child looked up at them, his glowing eyes calm as if what he had done was natural. The Empire's plan had failed. Instead of killing hope, they had made it stronger. By dawn, word of the failed assassination reached the court. The nobles raged, the generals cursed, the priests whispered of prophecy, and across the galaxy the oppressed whispered louder. The Empire sent assassins, and they failed. The human and the princess still live. The child has powers even the Empire fears. What had started as a cruel joke had now turned into terror. The Empire no longer mocked. They no longer laughed. They were afraid. Afraid of a farmer. Afraid of a fallen princess. Afraid of a child of two worlds. The galaxy had begun to change, and the Empire could no longer stop it. The failed assassination spread fear through the Empire. Their finest killers had returned in shame, whispering of the boy who shone like a star and sent them flying with a single cry. The nobles no longer dared to laugh. They trembled, and trembling bred anger. If blades cannot end him, then armies will, declared a general. If the human farmer will not surrender, then we burn his world until nothing remains. The order was given. Warships gathered, their engines roaring like thunder, their weapons primed for destruction. Earth, once ignored as a backwater, now stood at the center of the galaxy's storm. On the farm, Daniel knew what was coming. He saw the dark shapes in the skies, the heavy clouds of invasion, and he understood. This was no longer about him, his wife, or his son. This was about fear. The Empire feared what his family represented. They feared hope. One evening, as the sun bled red over the horizon, Daniel sat with the princess and Aaron outside their home. He looked at them, his wife with her silver skin glowing softly, his son with eyes brighter than the stars, and he knew he would not run. "They will come for us," he said quietly. The princess's voice was firm. "Then we stand." Aaron, though still a child, nodded as if he understood. And so, Daniel prepared. He was no soldier. He had never trained for war. But the soil had taught him patience, the seasons had taught him endurance, and love had taught him courage. He built defenses with his own hands. Trenches, barriers, hidden traps. He gathered old rifles and forged weapons from farming tools. He taught his wife how to fire, and he taught his son, though young, to never hide his strength. The Empire thought him weak, but weakness is a mask that hides the heart of steel. When the night came, the earth trembled under alien boots. Soldiers in black armor descended upon the farm, their eyes cold, their weapons humming with deadly power. Behind them hovered machines of war, drones with burning lights, ships that blotted out the stars. The commander stepped forward. "Surrender the child," he commanded. "Surrender the traitor princess, or be destroyed." Daniel stepped out of his home, rifle in hand. His voice was steady. "This is my family. You will not take them." The soldiers laughed cruelly. What was one man against an army? But the laugh died when Daniel fired the first shot. One soldier fell, and then another. The battle began. The farm erupted into chaos. Alien soldiers stormed forward, but Daniel fought like a man possessed. Every bullet found its mark. Every trap he had laid tore through their lines. His arms burned, his body ached, but he did not falter. The princess fought too, her alien strength unleashed for the first time. She moved like a storm, striking down those who dared come near her son. No longer was she the broken princess. She was a mother, and nothing was stronger than that. Aaron, standing in the shadows, could not stay hidden. The soldiers tried to seize him, but with a cry he released his power again. Light burst from him, a wave of force that shattered armor and sent enemies crashing to the ground. The boy's small frame trembled, but his eyes blazed with defiance. The Empire's army faltered. They had expected an easy kill. Instead, they faced a farmer who fought like a warrior, a princess who fought like a queen, and a child whose power defied their very understanding of life. When the smoke cleared, the field was littered with fallen soldiers. Machines lay broken, their lights dim. The survivors fled, their courage shattered, red. Daniel dropped to his knees, exhausted, his rifle slipping from his hands. The princess ran to him, helping him stand. Aaron placed his small, glowing hand on his father's arm, and Daniel felt strength return. They had survived, but survival came with a cost. The Empire would not forgive this defeat. They would send more. They would send greater forces, and soon, Earth itself would become a battlefield. Yet even as fear pressed down, something else rose higher. Across the stars, the story spread. A human farmer stood against the Empire's army and lived. The infertile princess fought as a mother and won. The child of two worlds has power beyond imagination. Oppressed worlds listened. Rebels stirred. Slaves whispered of freedom. Hope had become fire, and the Empire had lit it themselves. Daniel looked at his family and spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy. They call me a farmer. Good. Because farmers plant seeds. And we have planted the seed of their end. The Empire had tried to break him. Instead, they had made him a symbol. And symbols never die. Years passed. The galaxy did not forget the night Earth stood against the Empire. Whispers turned into stories, and stories turned into legends. Across distant colonies and broken worlds, the tale spread of a farmer, a princess, and their child, who defied the greatest power in the stars. The Empire tried to crush the story. They sent armies, they burned villages, they silenced witnesses. But the harder they fought, the louder the legend grew. The people had tasted hope, and hope does not die. On Earth, Daniel, the princess, and Aaron lived in constant danger, but they also lived with pride. Their son grew taller, stronger, and wiser. His power deepened, but his heart stayed pure. He laughed easily, loved his parents fiercely, and dreamed not of war, but of freedom for all. The princess, once callow, infertile and useless, was no longer a shadow of shame. She was a mother, fierce and unbroken. The weight of her people's scorn had been replaced by the strength of her child's embrace. Where once she walked with lowered eyes, now she stood tall, her head high, her gaze burning with purpose. But the Empire could not ignore her forever. One day, a messenger arrived. Not a soldier this time, but an envoy wrapped in robes of silver. He carried no weapon, only words. The court demands your presence. The Empire wishes to see with their own eyes the truth of what you have become. It was a summons, but also a trap. Daniel knew it. The princess knew it. Yet she also understood something greater. The galaxy was watching. If she refused, the Empire would twist the story. If she went, she could show them that the joke they once made had become their undoing. So she chose to return. Together with Daniel and Aaron, she boarded the envoy's ship. As the engines roared and Earth grew small beneath them, Daniel took her hand. Whatever happens, he said softly, we stand together. She gripped his hand tightly, her heart steady. For the first time, she did not feel like she was walking into judgment. She was walking into destiny. The ship carried them to the Empire's capital, a world of endless towers, glowing skies, and a court that had once mocked her into silence. The great hall was filled with nobles, generals, priests, and spies. Their eyes burned with curiosity, fear, and disbelief. The princess stepped forward. She wore no crown, no jewels, only the simple robes she had chosen as a mother. But she did not need gold or silk. She carried something greater, the truth. Gasps filled the hall as Aaron walked beside her. His eyes glowed faintly, his presence calm yet powerful. Every step he took felt like thunder. He was proof, living proof, that the Empire's pride had been broken by a human's love. The nobles whispered furiously. Some demanded the boy be taken. Others trembled in silence. The Emperor himself leaned forward. his voice sharp. We gave you away as nothing. We made you a joke, and yet you return with this. The princess raised her chin, her voice ringing clear. You gave me to a human because you thought I was broken. You thought I was worthless. But that human gave me respect. He gave me love. And together, we created life you said could never exist. Her words echoed through the hall. You mocked me as infertile. Now I return as a mother. You mocked humans as weak. Now you fear the strength of one. Daniel stepped forward, standing tall even among the alien nobles. You thought me a farmer, too simple to matter. But farmers plant seeds. And what you see before you is the seed of a new future. One you cannot control. The hall erupted in chaos. Some shouted for war. Others begged for peace. But the truth was undeniable. The empire could no longer laugh, could no longer hide behind lies. The child of two worlds stood before them, not as a weapon, but as a promise. And in that moment, the galaxy shifted. Rebellions flared brighter, voices rose louder, and chains began to break. The infertile princess had returned, not in shame, but in triumph. She was no longer the gift nobody wanted. She was the mother of hope. As the family stood together in the heart of the empire, even the emperor's voice trembled. What have we done? He whispered. The answer was clear. They had given away a princess as a joke, but she had returned as a mother, and with her came the end of their rule and the beginning of a new age.